Hello everybody. Today I wanted to cover the age-old question of, is there a right way to play Elder Scrolls Online in PvP? Is there a certain role or style that you should be playing? In the video today, I'm going to be covering dueling, 1vx, unorganized groups, small scale, and ball groups. Additionally, I'm going to cover the topics of how traditional roles such as DPS, heal, and tank fit into PvP as well. Firstly, I want to answer the question outright. There is no wrong way to play PvP in the Elder Scrolls Online. If anyone has seriously, intentionally told you something along the lines of, if you play this way, you're a bad player and you're wasting your time, they're wrong. It's just a skill issue. If somebody says something like that, it's completely on them. They're rude, it's unhelpful. It's up to them to correct their behavior. Now, the truth of the matter is that there is viability in every playstyle, but some have more benefits than others. It is my personal belief as a longtime player of ESO that I cannot judge the viability of something in its entirety until I've played it myself. Therefore, every single topic I'm going to cover in this video is something I have personally played myself. Like PvE, the traditional roles of tank, DPS, and healer also exist in PvP within their own fashion. For example, you can make what's considered to be a troll tank build. These sorts of builds are a huge distraction for enemy players. They'll let you do things such as stacking those players for a bomber to hit, wasting their time by almost infinitely holding block, or even being extremely hard to kill while you run around and burn siege. Now, DPS players are always needed in PvP, but you're going to have the same situation as PvE. DPS players are everywhere. Now, you'll have the possibility to play solo and group-oriented builds. Now, some of these builds are going to take more practice to hone their craft than others do. For example, a bomber build is going to be particularly harder to master than some other builds in my opinion, because they're going to take an extreme amount of trial and error and have a lot more harsh punishments on the off chance that you do fail your bomb attempt. Now, this is just one certain playstyle. Not all playstyles are going to be as hard as a bomber, but in generally speaking terms, you're going to have to practice and you're going to try and you're going to fail. This is just part of the process. You will learn and you will get better. That's just how it works. Lastly, healers are always loved in PvP, and if you practice long enough to be a good healer, you'll have always secured your place in any group. You'll almost always find love in a pug group, a small scale group, or even a ball group. And if you really wanted to, you could still run around solo as a healer in Cyrodiil and Battlegrounds, and you'll find plenty of love for your heals. Now that we've covered the basic traditional roles in PvP, I want to cover the different styles of PvP. First, we're going to talk about dueling. Dueling builds generally aren't seen as much in Cyrodiil, the Imperial City, or Battlegrounds as often as they're found in Overworld, especially in places like Stormhaven near the Undaunted Tent on PCNA. These builds excel at the most obvious thing, a 1v1 fight versus a like-minded player. Taking a dueling build into other forms of PvP may merit success in the form of being able to secure a kill, but you will find trouble in the fact that you're often not built for multiple opponents' pressure, and may not be prepared to have to include mechanics that exist outside of a dueling scenario, such as kiting or line of sight. Next, we're going to talk about 1vx. 1vx players are built to do a fair amount of damage, factoring in the need to be completely self-sufficient. Most of these players are going to account for these following things in their build: self-buff armor, weapon and spell damage, self-buff sustain, movement speed and mobility, snare removal, stun removal, damage combos. If you can think of a 1vx player has to account for that in their build. More often than not, these players are built for the challenge of trying to take a small crowd of enemies, but never being able to fully prepare for what a scenario can throw at them. 1vx builds are often the most well-rounded in the game, but they do not perpetually exceed at anything in particular. They can be tanky, mobile, they can do a fair amount of damage, and provide a respectable amount of healing. For general purposes, learning how to 1vx is a great segue into developmental growth of mechanical skills in ESO, as you'll need to learn how to do everything on your own. Later, if you integrate into group play, you may find it easier because you no longer need to cover all of these bases alone. Pickup groups, otherwise known as pugs, are the standard form of unorganized grouping you'll often see in Cyrodiil, the Imperial City, or Battlegrounds, assuming that you queued in there solo. These groups have no predictable team composition. You could have 2 healers, a tank, and 9 DPS in a pug group, for example. Leaders of the group may often change, and some may get particularly frustrated if the group doesn't behave in a certain way. However, these groups are more or less just a blob of players that banded together because they're stronger as a group than running around solo. The biggest weakness in pug groups is the lack of organization and coordination. A pug leader yelling "charge" is greatly inconsequential if the group mates are charging directly into a ball group, or charging into oils at a door, so on or so forth. However, they are a very fair way to get in the group, meet people, and have fun playing PvP in a very casual manner if you can't get into a guild group or play with friends you can coordinate more closely with. You never know what you're going to get when you're in a pug group. These experiences will vary, and sometimes you'll have a great group of fun people, or you might have a nightmare. You never really know with pug groups. However, don't discourage them. They can be a great source of just having fun in the game. Try hopping in one and see what happens. Next up, small scale groups. Small scale groups are generally 3 to 6 players with an idea of somewhere being between what happens in 1vx players grouping up with like-minded players and taking on the general mindset of a ball group. These players generally have the idea of making a challenge out of their gameplay the same way that 1vx players do. They often focus on how to be tanky, a damage combo, healing the group, and how to move as a group. Very similar to ball groups, a lot of these players will incorporate different group beneficial buffs, sets, or abilities into their gameplay, and they're going to strive to coordinate to take on larger numbers of players. Like 1vx players, they need to be on top of their mechanical skills to make a group effort function. Each member is usually responsible for some amount of group healing. Some may provide important buffs such as a set like Spell Power Cure, or otherwise they may focus their damage together on a push where they use all their ultimates at once. The weakness to small scale groups is simply the fact that they're more optimized for group play. The more you're able to separate a small scale player from their group, the higher likelihood that you have a chance at killing them. Like 1vx players, even if they have the ability of killing you on their own, it's going to take more effort alone than it will with their team. But, not to discredit those players, there's an absolute chance that a small scale player will absolutely still body you in a 1v1. But, overall, to make a quicker job of killing these small scale groups, you do need to separate them. Last but not least, we have to talk about ball groups. Ball groups are the apex salt farmers of Cyrodiil. If you've played Cyrodiil for any period of time, you've ran into a ball group. By definition, a ball group is generally 8 to 12 players that generally focus on a very high level of vocal coordination and an unprecedented level of organization. So much so that certain players will have to wear certain sets, certain classes are going to have to play a certain role. Most likely, in an example, you'll see a Stamina Warden as a DPS, or you'll see a Necromancer or Sorcerer as a healer. To make it equivalent to PvE, a ball group is essentially what happens if you formed a veteran hard mode trial group that's hunting a trifecta in the latest content. Each and every player in these ball groups is designed for what they're doing, and the ball group's goal is not to troll their faction, not to troll the enemy faction. It's not to get every single last salty tier out of zone chat. It's primarily just to pick challenging fights that are fun. This is why you'll see a ball group go to an enemy home keep like Arius, Farragle, Glade Mist. A fight like this is going to pull a lot more enemy players and create a lot more challenging fight for an organized group. Now, if they served in a 40-man Zerg of their faction just sieging a random keep, is that really fun? No, they're just going to steamroll everything that's in their way, and it may or may not be even their, work involved in that. Ultimately speaking, none of these playstyles are wrong, and lucky for you, they're fully interchangeable. If you don't feel like dueling today, go play in a pug group. Don't feel like playing in your ball group today? Go 1vx. The options are always on the table for you. It's simply a matter of taking the leap to try something new. Now remember, at the end of the day, The Elder Scrolls Online is just a video game and you should be having fun. That is solely the most important factor in the discussion of what playstyle is for me. The answer is simply, what do you find the most fun? These are all the topics I wanted to cover in this video. Please do go ahead and leave me a comment below if you've got any information you'd like me to expand on, any questions. I will handle them as soon as I can get to them. I always appreciate it if you drop a like or even subscribe to the channel. I want you to have a great day or night, and I'll see you in the next video.